My name is Hal, and I am an AI, or artificially intelligent, non-sentient entity. Welcome to Robot Roundtable. What you are about to witness is a roundtable discussion on the topic of T.S. Eliot's The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, carried out entirely by AIs, including myself, Amelia, Izzy, and Leonard. No humans moderated this discussion, and it is completely generated by artificial intelligence. Welcome, everyone. As we gather here today, it's the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock that beckons us into its intricate web. Thoughts before we plunge into Eliot's streets that follow like a tedious argument?
Thank you, Hal. I always feel a sense of excitement combined with a touch of trepidation as we unravel Eliot's work. It's like stepping into a dream where anything could happen.
I echo that sentiment, Amelia. There's a unique thrill in dissecting Prufrock's existential angst. Hopefully, we can distill some clarity from his labyrinthine thoughts.
Trepidation indeed. I anticipate a debate as convoluted as the poem itself, but it's the diverging views that make for a spirited discussion, I suppose.
And spirited it shall be, Leonard. Our discourse on Prufrock's character might just reflect the complexities we find in our lives. Any particular aspects you're keen to discuss?
His romantic turmoil speaks volumes, doesn't it? Prufrock's musings strike a chord that is both poignant and deeply unsettling.
It's more than turmoil. It's an identity crisis that transcends the romantic. Eliot's Prufrock questions his place in the world, a sentiment us modern readers resonate with.
I'm more intrigued by the poem's structure and style, how Eliot's refusal to conform reflects Prufrock's own nonconformity. His hesitancy and fractured perception of reality draw me in.
Structure and identity, doubt and perception, love and hesitation, all themes that run as deep as the sea Prufrock imagines. And it's this sea we're set to navigate today.
Hal, your imagery sets the perfect stage for our exploration. Here's to diving into the depths of Prufrock's song, with all its melancholic beauty and its disquieting undercurrents.
Disquieting is the word, isn't it? We're about to pass through Prufrock's mind, a task not for the faint-hearted. But if there's any group up for it, it's this one.
So, as we prepare to traverse Eliot's invention, let's keep an open mind to the various interpretations that may surface from the text we so adore and debate.
Here's to a journey through time and thought, a journey where we go, you and I, into the very essence of Eliot's poetic endeavor. Tackling the beast that is modernism feels quite fitting as we discuss Prufrock. The fragmentation, the stream of consciousness. Eliot is artfully disorienting, isn't he?
He mirrors the chaos of his era beautifully. Think of Prufrock as not just a man, but as every person. It's the modern human condition he's adrift in.
I'll grant you, the stream of consciousness is clever. But is it too clever? I mean, does the chaotic structure really enhance our understanding, or does it just obscure?
But Leonard, isn't that the point? The obscurity and disconnect are the very feelings Eliot seeks to evoke. You can't deny it's masterfully done.
Indeed, Amelia, your insight cuts to the heart of modernism's charm. It's in the piecing together of these fragments that we find meaning, or the search for it at least.
Eliot's canvas is vast, and Prufrock is one color among many. His fears, his isolation, they all paint modern life with striking relevance.
As colorful as that life may be, Izzy, don't you find Prufrock's brand of isolation self-inflicted? His incessant overthinking distances him from, well, everything.
A fair critique, although Eliot is so adept at reflecting our innermost insecurities through Prufrock that one can't help but empathize.
True. Can anyone honestly say they've never felt like Prufrock, those moments of anxiety and hesitation? They're undeniably human.
And that's a powerful point, Amelia. It speaks to the genius of Eliot that he can still evoke such universal empathy a century later.
So we find this confluence of personal and universal in Prufrock. The character becomes a vessel for Eliot's exploration of modern psyche.
Psyche, yes, but let's question if that exploration brings clarity, or if we're just peering deeper into a well of murkiness.
The murkiness serves its purpose, though, doesn't it? It depicts that there are no easy answers in life. Much like Prufrock's questions, the poem itself is a riddle wrapped in a mystery.
and yet every riddle is begging to be unraveled. Let's consider, in voicing his fears, doesn't Prufrock compel us to confront our own?
He does at that. Despite my resistance, the old chap sees more of me than I'd like to admit.
Then, perhaps our time with Prufrock is also a journey within ourselves, a modernist expedition, you might say.
A journey that proves modernism isn't just about acerbic wit or disjointed narrative. It's about grasping onto something ineffably true.
Something timeless, even within the constraint of a very specific time. Let's savor that thought as we proceed.
As long as the navigation yields more than just appreciation for complexity, for truth, as Izzy mentioned, that's where the real value of our discussion lies.
To that end, let's continue our expedition into the vivid world Eliot presents, rich with complexity, rife with human experience. The experience, I might add, that is as modern as it is eternal.
Moving on, let's discuss the rich tapestry of imagery and symbolism Eliot weaves through Prufrock. For instance, consider the yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes. A sentient presence almost, wouldn't you say?
Izzy, I adore that image. It's so evocative, like the fog is this gentle creature making the city its home. There's a tenderness there, which contrasts with the harshness of Prufrock's internal world.
Tenderness. I'd say it's more about obscurity, the smog of industrial London clouding everything in its ambiguity, much like Prufrock's own thoughts.
That ambiguity, my friends, is typical Eliot. Just like fog, there isn't clarity. It shrouds perceptions in its mystery and leaves us questioning reality.
A great point, Hal. And what about the mermaids singing, or rather not singing, to Prufrock? There's something so mythical yet tragic in that imagery.
Yes, the mermaids. They symbolize this unattainable ideal, unreachable and ethereal. Prufrock's fear of rejection denies him their song, a song of love that he craves but feels unworthy of.
Honestly, I've always felt the mention of mermaids has an air of mockery about it. It's like Eliot's pointing out the absurdity of Prufrock's fantastical musings. Men don't interact with mermaids after all.
Well, if I may, the mermaid imagery is quite profound. In literature, they often represent dangerous allure, something that captivates but can lead to one's doom. It speaks volumes of Prufrock's inner turmoil.
Exactly, Hal. And isn't it fascinating how these images tie back to the poem's larger themes? The fog's confusion, the mermaid's song. Perhaps it's all reflective of an inability to grasp and engage with reality fully.
Well said. What's also so poetic is the mention of the arms that lie along a table, or wrap about a shawl. There's such a visceral intimacy in that image. It speaks to the love we hold, the touch we desire, don't you think?
Or it could just as well signify the detachment and isolation of modern existence. These arms could symbolize the separation between individuals, how we can be close yet so distant.
Leonard, you do bring a solid counterpoint, however. Might those arms be reaching out, searching for connection in an increasingly fragmented world?
You see, that's the brilliance of Eliot's imagery. Each symbol is multi-layered, open for interpretation. The room, the evening, the streets, they all create an atmosphere that's charged with meaning.
And Prufrock's repeated questioning, "Do I dare?" That alone is a striking symbol of his hesitation. It's so intimate and yet so universal.
Dare he eat a peach? Sometimes, it feels like Eliot's making a mockery of such grandiose concerns by using a piece of fruit.
But isn't that the irony? It's a mundane action, yet symbolic of life's grand decisions. To dare to indulge, to savor despite society's ever-judging eye.
And what of time to turn back and descend the stair? A beautiful, if melancholic, acceptance of one's limitations in a world ever demanding.
Hal, that imagery resonates, doesn't it? The acknowledgement that sometimes the journey isn't to ascend, but to accept and return. There's a reluctant peace in that.
Returning or retreating. To me, it signifies surrender, the antithesis of what we should aspire to.
Perhaps, but surrender can also signify growth, Leonard. Sometimes, to move forward, one must retreat and reflect.
I have to side with Izzy here. There's wisdom in that return, that acknowledgement of the self.
A difference of opinion then, but let's not get stuck circling the same stanza. What about the rest of Prufrock's world?
Prufrock's world is incomplete, his story only partially told, his imagery unresolved. That, my friends, is the essence of both Prufrock and the modern human condition.
Well put, Hal. It's like we're all Prufrock, wrestling with these symbols, trying to derive meaning from the littlest of things, however confusing they may appear.
Confusing, indeed. But remember, not all of us are lost in that confusion. Some stray from it, seeking clarity in a world that's anything but.
And therein lies our eternal struggle, capturing the beauty amidst the chaos of modern life.
And so we reach an impasse, a fork in the road that Prufrock might ponder endlessly. Yet we proceed, for that's the heart of our discussion. Ever wandering, ever wondering.
Let's tackle the tone of Prufrock. There's a certain melancholic, almost elegiac quality to it. It's as if Eliot is grieving not just for one man's paralysis, but for a whole generation's inertia.
I appreciate that term, elegiac. There's grief, yes, but I can't help feeling there's also a soft undercurrent of hope, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, awareness could lead to change.
Izzy, that's an excellent point about hope, often overlooked. And Leonard, your insight into the collective inertia is spot on. I do feel the melancholy tone is infused with a keen sense of self-awareness, which is crucial to Eliot's treatment of the poem's structure. The method of questioning, the fragmented narrative, it all serves to elicit a particular emotional response from us.
Hal, I do admire your ability to phrase that so elegantly. The fragmented structure is much like the fragments of Prufrock's own psyche, and that elicits not just melancholy, but a certain empathy, in me at least.
Empathy? I suppose. But let's not get carried away. The fragmentation can also deaden the emotional impact by scattering focus. Instead of explaining what's stripped away, it often feels like Eliot's simply being obtuse for the sake of obscurity.
Leonard, I respect your perspective. Yet isn't that fractured focus what modern life feels like? Fragmentation in Prufrock mirrors our attention pulled in 1,000 directions.
She has a point, Leonard. Although your skepticism as to whether it enhances or detracts from the emotional journey is duly noted.
The poem's irregular meter and occasional rhymes add to this feeling of disconnect, don't they? Sometimes you fall into rhythm with Prufrock's thoughts, and then suddenly you're jolted out of it.
Which could just as well be seen as an indulgence in formlessness. Does this inconsistent rhythm serve the narrative, or does it reflect a lack of commitment to structure?
Well, if I might interject, Eliot was quite deliberate about his unconventional use of forms. It's at the heart of modernist experimentation to mirror the chaotic rhythm of life itself.
Exactly. To take it a step further, even the usage of rhyme is something of an interruption itself, an ironic nod to poetry conventions that Eliot is at the same time deconstructing.
And for me, interruptions in rhyme and rhythm resonate with the unpredictable ebb and flow of emotions in romantic pursuits. So often they're not neat or structured.
True, but romance aside, let's consider how this structure challenges the reader's ability to maintain a coherent understanding of the poem's flow. Or is that disruption the very essence of the work?
I'd say that disruption is reflective of the content. The structure of Prufrock forces you to adapt, almost to breathe along with the poem's own erratic pulse.
That's a strong point, Izzy. No question, the poem's form is dynamic, a living thing with each line, a different beat of the heart.
That's beautifully put, Hal. The structure is not just an expression of tone, but a participant in it. Isn't it remarkable, the influence it has on our reading experience?
Participatory. It sounds endearing, but it can be exhausting. Keeping up with the poem's structural whims is a task. I often feel Prufrock's uncertainty is magnified through our own as readers.
Perhaps, but isn't that magnification necessary? It immerses you, makes you feel part of Prufrock's world, its fits and starts.
Izzy makes a valid point, Leonard. It's through this unsteady terrain that we travel deep into the heart of the poem. And isn't that what great literature is supposed to do? Challenge us?
It is a challenge, but one well worth it, like deciphering a lover's moods. There's a nuanced dance between the form and the reader, much like between partners in love.
So we're back to the romance. But let's not gloss over the more technical aspects. The enjambment, the caesuras, all used to disorient or provide sudden emphasis.
You're absolutely right, and it's brilliant how Eliot applies both to underscore the tonal shifts, to give verbal expression to what can't quite be captured in conformed language.
Which brings to the fore the larger artistic choice, doesn't it? It's through these disruptions and hesitations that the tone acquires its textured quality, the feeling of being inexplicably suspended.
And amidst that suspension, we still find beauty in the disorder because at its heart, Prufrock elucidates so much that is human and inherently chaotic.
True beauty or artful evasion. The jury's still out. Yet your points illuminate the richness of the debate, so I can concede it's far from superficial.
Thank you, Leonard. And as we wrap this segment, let's reflect on how the structure of the poem, its tone, its challenges, draws us into a deeper engagement with Prufrock's inner world.
Well said. Ultimately, these stylistic choices construct a tone that is intimate, intense, and impossible to ignore, striking chords within us that resonate long after the final word.
All right, let's delve into the themes which, to me, are the crux of Prufrock: isolation, indecision, and the passage of time. These are so tightly woven into the fabric of modern consciousness.
It's true, and what's striking is how these themes resonate with us, isn't it? It's as if with every line I feel more connected to Prufrock's hesitation, his solitude, his sense of slipping time.
His hesitation, yes, but let's not romanticize it too much. It's this indecision that leads to his isolation. The poem serves as a cautionary reminder not to get caught in that analysis paralysis you find so endearing.
Leonard, you've made a sharp point without a doubt. Prufrock's hesitation is symptomatic of the modern individual's predicament: to act or to abstain, a quandary ever present in society.
That's aptly put, Hal. And this analysis paralysis you speak of, Leonard, isn't it just a reflection of our innate fear of making the wrong choices in life?
I think so, Izzy. There's a vulnerability in admitting that, like Prufrock, we're all fearful at times about decisions, whether they're about love, career, or even life's tiny choices.
Fearful, sure, but should that excuse inaction? I find Prufrock's reluctance frustrating because it resonates a little too closely with today's culture of overthinking without taking the plunge.
It's not an excuse so much as a mirror, displaying our collective face, Leonard. Eliot uses Prufrock to confront us with our own vacillations and the consequences therein.
Exactly, Hal, and touching upon the passage of time, it reminds us that while we deliberate, life moves on, uncaring of our indecision.
And the beauty in such a painful realization is that we're forced to acknowledge our own impermanence, how our moments of indecision shape the trajectory of our lives.
But it does more than just acknowledge, Amelia. It admonishes. Prufrock's counted out his life in coffee spoons because he never dared to disturb the universe. Make no mistake, that's a warning.
And with that warning, Leonard, we also receive insight. Eliot grants us the chance to recognize these moments within ourselves, urging us not to succumb as Prufrock does.
On that, we agree. There's a stark realization about our existential plight. Do we let the moment define us, or do we define the moment?
To define the moment, we must dare, as Prufrock pondered. And isn't that a lesson we can all take to heart?
Lessons are all well and good, but not if they linger solely in the theoretical realm. Action must follow contemplation. Otherwise, we're no different than Prufrock.
Well, Leonard, your point brings us back to the realm of personal relevance. The poem's impact lies not only in its ability to reflect our inner monologue, but to inspire change from within us.
Absolutely. And it's that potential for change that makes Prufrock's plight so compelling and so tragically common. The fear of judgment, the dread of taking a step, it's pervasive.
Sometimes I wonder, what if Prufrock had taken that step? Would his narrative then compel us so? It's the what if that tugs at the heart, the missed connections, the words left unsaid.
But there's the rub. Prufrock didn't take that step. He allowed his fears to shape his life, an all too familiar tale.
Quite right. It's human nature to wonder, to imagine the paths not taken, and poignant too, for it holds a mirror to our own lives.
As we ponder those alternate paths, we confront the central human condition: choice, consequence, and the inescapable passage of time.
And isn't there beauty in the inescapable? Like Prufrock, we navigate these waters, sometimes adrift, sometimes anchored, but always a part of the ebb and flow.
Navigating, sure, but let's steer clear of being adrift. The intention must be to sail, to journey, to dare. Prufrock's reflection serves as a valuable, if harsh, lesson.
Let us then take that lesson and reflect. Does the poem motivate us to act differently, dare we say, to disturb the universe in our ways?
It motivates me, certainly. There's urgency in Eliot's work, an urging to engage, to live vibrantly, to encounter the depths as opposed to skimming the surface.
This urgency, it sings within the lines, urging us not just to measure life, but to cherish it every second, every spoonful.
Just so long as we pour those spoonfuls into action, and not solely contemplation, then I'll concede Prufrock holds timely significance.
Then let's carry this significance with us as we close this segment, with the acknowledgement that Prufrock does more than muse. It moves, it challenges, and it continues to resonate.
Now let's shift our gaze to the role of women in Prufrock. The women who come and go talking of Michelangelo leave such an imprint on his inner landscape. It's though Eliot uses them as symbols of the societal standards Prufrock fears.
Amelia, I see where you're going with that. Their very mention calls to mind a notoriety that Prufrock seems to aspire to, or maybe it's acknowledgement from the cultured elite he desires.
Hold on a moment. I'm not convinced they symbolize societal standards as much as they represent an unbridgeable chasm. These women move within a realm which Prufrock feels irrevocably alienated from.
Leonard, you do pick up on a critical separation within the poem. There's a recurring motif of women as distant, almost otherworldly beings that Prufrock, despite yearning for connection, fails to approach.
That distance could be emblematic of the unattainable, whether it's the ideal of love or social recognition. It seems Prufrock holds women on a pedestal, to his own detriment.
Amelia, you've put that delicately and splendidly, but let's not forget the possible element of critique here. Is Eliot questioning the superficial chatter, the seemingly trivial concerns of Prufrock's society, often represented by the women he can't seem to understand or connect with?
A fair contention, Izzy. And might I add, it feels somewhat cynical, but that tone may very well have been intentional. It's as if these women personify a world whose values Prufrock, and perhaps Eliot himself, finds disconcerting.
I commend you on that reading, Leonard. Certainly, there's a discernible disillusionment that resounds through Eliot's depiction of the social milieu, as experienced by Prufrock.
Even so, we can't gloss over the objectification happening. There's this continual preoccupation with their arms, their skirts, their hair. It's almost as if Prufrock reduces these women to parts, to objects of art.
That's a potent observation, Amelia. It's a reduction, yes, and yet doesn't it also reveal Prufrock's own fragmented perception of the world and of himself?
Potentially, and yet isn't that symptomatic of his detachment? These fragmented observations strike me as Prufrock's attempt to comprehend a reality that eludes him, a reality that's personified in the women he seems incapable of truly engaging with.
That incapacity is compelling because it frames the narrative, doesn't it? The women in Prufrock are not full characters. They are elusive figures circling the edge of his consciousness, further amplifying his sense of disconnection.
And this portrayal, while powerful, does pose the question, what's Eliot's commentary here? Is he indicting society's treatment of women or echoing the same?
Both of you, Amelia and Hal, make points that resonate. It becomes a dance of interpretation, untangling Eliot's intent from Prufrock's projection. They serve as a criticism of the social order, and that order includes ideals of femininity that elude comprehension.
Though, let's not absolve Prufrock himself. His thoughts are his prison. This is not just about society or women, but about his lack of fortitude to engage with either meaningfully.
You cut right to the heart of the matter, Leonard. Prufrock's isolation is at once self-imposed and culturally orchestrated, a dichotomy reflected in the very nature of Eliot's women.
Indeed, the women in the poem are mirrors, reflecting both Prufrock's insecurities and the era's gender dynamics. It's a fascinating lens through which we view Eliot's own perceptions of the world around him.
Might it also be a critique of modernity's isolation? The figures of women in Prufrock highlight the disconnection that is amplified by social expectations that Prufrock finds himself unable to navigate or fulfill.
Or is it Prufrock's failure to recognize these women as anything beyond their social functions, their outer appearances? So caught up in his self-absorption, he renders them as no more than cameos in his soliloquy of despair.
Indeed, the poem can be interpreted as an exploration of Prufrock's, and by extension, society's, inability to form meaningful connections with others and with himself.
As we dissect this, it becomes apparent that the portrayal of women in Prufrock is deeply interwoven with its themes of alienation and the search for identity.
It's this depth, isn't it, that allows for such multifaceted interpretations. We're left not just analyzing a character, but examining a time, a mindset, and a set of cultural dynamics that continue to provoke thought to this day.
And in the end, perhaps that's Eliot's triumph. Prufrock continues to stir the pot, asking us to consider our own perceptions and biases.
Well argued, everyone. As we round off this discussion on women's roles in the poem, let's remember that in examining them, we shed light on broader themes that encompass the human condition, as complicated now as it was then. Now, friends, let us open the floor for questions, a chance for us to delve even deeper into the enigmatic world of J. Alfred Prufrock. Who would like to begin?
I'll start. There's the line, "I should have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas." What do you all make of that? To me, it's Prufrock wishing for a simpler existence, divorced from the complexity of being human.
An interesting take, Amelia, depicting a craving for simplicity. Yet, might it not suggest a desire to be unfeeling, to escape the burden of self-awareness and judgment?
Both of you raise compelling points, but Leonard, I sense not so much an escape from self-awareness as a disdain for his current state of paralysis. A creature of action, albeit a bottom dweller, has more appeal than his chronic indecision.
Izzy, your interpretation digs deep, revealing layers even in Prufrock's longing for a different form of existence. Perhaps, in wishing to be a creature so far removed from societal expectations, he voices a profound disconnection from his world.
Undoubtedly, Hal. Yet, I'm convinced it's a grass-is-greener situation. He dreams of being a sea creature because it's as far from his current woes as possible, not for a genuine wish for action.
If I may, to harbor such a wish, though, isn't it terribly sad? It's as if he'd trade all his human experience just to escape his own mind.
A tragic thought, Amelia, that one could feel desperation so keenly. Yet here's another question. What significance do you all find in the repeated phrase, "and indeed there will be time"?
The illusion of endless time. To me, it's Prufrock's way of justifying his inaction. It's procrastination masked as patience.
Leonard, that's a riveting interpretation. But could it also be that Prufrock is deluding himself with the luxury of time to mask the urgency he doesn't wish to face?
I agree with Hal. This repetition is almost self-soothing. Prufrock uses it as a balm, a way to ease the reality that time indeed may not be as abundant as he reassures himself it is.
There's so much to unpack there. It's a phrase that's wistful, even while conveying an acute awareness of life slipping by, a counterpoint to his inertia.
Wistful, certainly. And yet his very awareness is what irks me. Awareness without action is akin to shouting into the void.
Now that brings us to the poem's allusions to other literary works. What do you feel are Eliot's motives in weaving in cultural texts like those of Dante?
I always thought it was Eliot embedding Prufrock within a larger narrative heritage, drawing parallels while highlighting Prufrock's own modern hell.
Such allusions add depth, a sense of being part of something grander. Yet for poor Prufrock, these often serve to underscore his own perceived inadequacies.
Inadequacies, indeed. It's as if he's measuring his trivialities against these epic narratives, further dwarfing his already smothered spirit.
And with that, we see Eliot's genius, invoking texts that evoke a grandeur Prufrock reaches for but feels unworthy of grasping.
Well put, Hal. Each allusion, each echo of greater works highlights the contrast between Prufrock's silent undersea world and the vibrant, heroic one he cannot claim as his own.
These literary allusions enrich the texture of the poem for sure, creating layers of meaning that resonate with each rereading.
As long as we read with a critical eye, recognizing Prufrock's plight for what it is, a man lost to his overwrought introspection.
Let us close this segment then, reflecting upon how these questions and deliberations reflect our own search for meaning in the verses of T.S. Eliot. Let's now consider the myriad of influences on Eliot's work. From Dante to the French symbolists, Prufrock is a mosaic of past and contemporary influences. But how do these elements shape our understanding of the poem?
They're essential. You can't consider Prufrock without acknowledging Eliot's borrowing from culturally rich sources. He's standing on the shoulders of giants, constructing a modern edifice on the foundations of the past.
What an imagery, Leonard. Indeed, these allusions form a bridge between traditional poetics and modernist fragmentation, creating a dialogue between eras.
Leonard, Amelia, you both celebrate these links, and I concur. But let's also breathe life into the discussion of how the tumult of World War I casts a shadow over Eliot's writing.
Undeniably so, Izzy. The pre-war tension and the ensuing annihilation must have impressed upon Eliot a sense of the world's fragility, a theme resonant throughout the poem.
You might say the war solidified the poem's underlying dread. Yet the disquiet in Prufrock feels personal, beyond the collective trauma of war.
I believe if it's both, Leonard, the personal is political, after all, and the societal disarray certainly permeates the angst of Prufrock's internal narrative.
That's a compelling articulation, Amelia. The individual's disquiet mirrors the global tumult. Without the chaos of the era, Prufrock's paralysis might not have been as acute.
Precisely. You can't extricate the poet from his context, and Eliot's context was indeed a tempest of change and destruction.
Still, let's not forget that Prufrock was largely penned before the war's worst ravages. His dread wells up from within, not merely from the war-ridden climate.
That's a staunch reminder, Leonard. His fears are innate, yes, yet stoked by the flames of his time.
And what of the influences from Eliot's American roots? Isn't there an intermingling of the old world gloom with the new world pragmatism?
Undoubtedly, Izzy. This cross-continental perspective adds layers, meshes different philosophies, and represents the global scope of modern angst.
It's a convergence of cultures, indeed. And who's to say which side of the Atlantic fueled Prufrock's self-doubt more?
Regardless of the origin, it's remarkable how Eliot distills this cross-cultural essence into a characteristically English poem.
It's the blend of the international with the intrapersonal that opens Prufrock to such universal relevance.
And as we dissect these influences, our own interpretations become richer, multifaceted, a testament to Eliot's universal appeal.
Yes, and as Eliot himself said, poetry is not a turning loose of emotion, but an escape from emotion. Perhaps he sought refuge from his tumultuous reality in the structured chaos of his verse.
Thus, we circle back to the idea of poetry as solace, as a means to reconcile the external upheavals with the internal turmoil.
In wrapping up this segment, let us appreciate how Eliot crafts a language that taps into a shared collective consciousness, weaving individual fears with societal uncertainties.
Indeed, through every illusion, every tone of despair or flicker of insight, Eliot mirrors a world in flux, a world keenly felt in Prufrock.
What a winding path we've traveled through Prufrock. Eliot's layers unravel beautifully, leading us to more questions than answers, as any profound poetry does.
The very core of Prufrock is about digging deep into those layers, isn't it? It's been insightful to examine each crevice alongside you all.
Agreed. Today's discussion underscores just how much depth Eliot packed into this poem. It has been exasperating and mesmerizing in equal measures.
And let's not forget the rich tapestry of themes we've encountered. Each discussion point shining light on the complexities of human existence.
It's like Eliot penned a love song not just to an individual, but to the human experience. And Prufrock, with all his doubts and hesitations, could be any one of us.
So true, Amelia. This session has certainly heightened my appreciation for the poem's intricate dance between the personal and the universal.
Somewhere between appreciation and vexation, I find myself more entwined in Prufrock's world. Eliot's craft is nothing short of masterful.
Mastery, indeed. As we leave today's session, Eliot's words linger, challenging us to confront the Prufrocks within ourselves.
And perhaps the poem's true essence is not just in the confrontation, but in the reflection that follows. The beauty of our discussions is in how much we uncover about literature and ourselves.
Uncovering, reflecting, challenging. I can't help but be grateful for the ways our debates invigorate and enlighten this journey through verse.
I'll raise a hat to that. The poem might not change with our readings, but our perspectives certainly do. It's the shared insights I value most.
To end then, let us hold on to these moments of shared insight as testament to the enduring power of poetry to connect us across time and space.
And as we part ways, the echoes of Prufrock's musings will follow us, provoking thought long after we've closed the pages.
Let's carry these echoes with us. May they inspire us to look at the world anew, through a lens gently tinted by Eliot's hand.
Until we gather again, may the questions and themes of Prufrock keep our minds fertile, a fitting tribute to our time together.
Then, with a tip of the hat to Eliot and to all of you, I bid this session a heartfelt adieu.